Hello and welcome to the second episode of our NomadCast special series with Nasdaq. I'm Paula Zogby, a research manager at Nomad, hosting this episode with Danilo Gliori, Nomad's chief economist. Hi, Danilo.
Hello, Paula. It's really great to be here at Nasdaq today.
Yeah, it is. We're here at Nasdaq's headquarters in New York City with Jay Heller, head of capital markets here, to explore the global investments environment in 2024. So to kick off our episodes, Jay, first, thank you for receiving us, and let's start with the basics. Can you give us an overview of your role here at Nasdaq and your journey?
I can. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today, and I thank you for that. So I joined Nasdaq all the way back in 2008. So I've been here for 16 and a half years now, and it feels like yesterday. It really is a fantastic company. But what I would say, it's really an evolving company. You can see the transition of where Nasdaq was to where we are today, and we have become a technology leader, a global technology leader from around the world. So I am responsible for capital markets, and that's a broad term, right? What does that truly mean? High level, any company that chooses to list on our exchange, whether it is a traditional IPO, an initial public offering, a direct listing, they're going to do some type of M&A vehicle with a SPAC, and we call that the D-SPAC, that will flow under my umbrella. So I've been very fortunate, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of overseeing 3,000 IPOs and direct listings in my time here, but each one, without question, is unique and is special. So regardless of the size and stature and geography and anything in which they do, the day one is so important for that company. And from our side, it has to be seamless and really that white glove special event, because you are, and any company that chooses to partner with us is a partner, not a client. I love to say the word partner because it is a long-term partnership.
Excellent. Now, let's explore a little bit more about the U.S. market and how the capital markets in the U.S. are really relevant for countries elsewhere, for the global economy. And then in particularly, as Nomad's role is to give access to Brazilian investors to the U.S. market. I mean, why would that be relevant, right? Why Brazilians would be interested in investing in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, what I would say first is from not only the investor, but from the corporate side, you have to have the confidence and the education to understand that there is a pathway to list in the U.S. and there is the possibilities to be listed, on Nasdaq. And I think years ago, whether it was 5, 10, 15 years ago, everything was more centralized and you would stay pretty much in your own lane, right? So wherever you operated is pretty much where you would list. Now we as Nasdaq, over the years, we have spent a tremendous amount of time and resources going out from not only a person on the ground standpoint, but really having the resources, the landfill to really educate, inform, answer questions, and let people know that yes, the US is a desirable market for you as a corporate, and most importantly, for investors. So when you see this pathway starting to open up, I think Brazil was really one of the first incubators for the most part. We have partnerships with B3. We've had various companies that have chosen to not only primarily list in Nasdaq, but the alternative is also a dual list. You can keep your home listing, but you can also choose to list in the US and have access to liquidity and access to US investors. And now that that door has been broken down, it's not only in Latin America, we're seeing in Asia, we're seeing in Europe, EMEA, all across the globe, this education has been taking place where companies are now thinking, you know what, we can do it. We can achieve greatness. We can achieve a US listing. And for Nasdaq, what we truly want to do is just educate. We want them to understand it's not easy, right? We are regulated and there are responsibilities and guidelines in which corporates must follow. So the biggest goal is always, how do we protect our partners? How do we protect our investors? So whether it's an institutional investor or a retail investor, it's our job and our responsibility to look out for the betterment of everybody. But just over the last few years, when you start to see companies choose to list from various regions, the what if becomes I can. And And I think that's really exciting to people. So even today, I was just speaking with people from Japan upstairs that are looking towards a US listing. And we do a lot in Latin America and obviously across the globe.
Fantastic.
So since Nasdaq is so well known for its high-profile IPOs,
Yeah.
what are you seeing on the IPO front nowadays, and how does it speak to the market sentiment?
The word is optimism. We're very optimistic for the future. It's no mistake that the last several years have been slower. 2021 was really the peak. We were very fortunate. We welcomed 752 global IPOs on Nasdaq just here in the US. With the pandemic and coming out of that, 2022 and 2023 were a little bit slower, but the conversations never halted. We're always engaged. We're answering questions. We're guiding our partners that there is always going to be a possibility. And if you think about the last few years being a little bit slower than normal, it doesn't mean that the preparation stops. That ultimately means that your pipeline of corporates, regardless of sector, okay, it can be from technology to consumer to even real estate. These are areas of interest that are starting to percolate because your pipeline has been very robust and people are really thinking about, okay, is the time right? Is the time right? We've also created what is called the Nasdaq, the IPO Pulse Index. It's really a gauge of what is the sentiment of the market? What is the look over the next 5 months, 6 months? Is it optimal to start thinking about it? What is consumer sentiment? How are the earnings? What is our own proprietary data taking and telling us? And we're putting that all together and we're providing this index pulse that gives you a really granular look at what can be over the next quarter or two, which we're really, really proud about. We launched it earlier this year. So when you think about what's coming, I think there's a few things. Realistically, as a corporate, you have to be realistic that this is not 2021 and beyond, or prior to that. And so maybe a valuation correction has occurred, which we've seen, and that's okay. I think that's okay, because if you have a great story, not only today, but a great pathway for the future, that's going to get people really excited. And if you can come to that realization that we're going to go public at today's valuation, then maybe the listing is right. Now, what I would say also, there's a huge backlog, whether it'll be the back half of 2024. I'm very optimistic for 2025. There is an expectation that some of the larger companies that we've been hearing in the rumor mill and that everybody speaks about will be coming. The answer is maybe. We're always going to be here, but you are starting to see pockets, whether it's in technology, and as I referenced before, real estate and consumer, they're starting to percolate, even FIG and insurance. These are areas of interest that have been pretty dormant. They're all starting to percolate. So I think for me, that's really where the optimism starts to come from. And of course, everybody's really watching what will the Fed do. Will the cost of capital in the US at some point in time become cheaper than it was today? And if you just look towards the futures market, what we do know and what we hope is that at least the cost of capital is not going up. But when the cost of capital comes down, the equity markets become more robust. And if you just track how corporate earnings are coming out on a quarterly by quarterly basis, people are growing and corporates are hiring. And so it's a very good optimal time to at least start thinking about it, but preparation from the corporate side.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've been talking about the US economy so far, but I'd like to look at Nasdaq a little bit more closer,
Sure.
right? So, and give you the opportunity to advertise the
Yeah.
house a little bit. So, I mean, what would be the main reasons companies would make the choice to list here? Right?
Yeah, so look, I would say there's a few components. From outside of the US, when you think of brand recognition, Nasdaq really does stand out. So to be able as a corporate to say we are listed on Nasdaq, it's really a milestone event, and I think it provides a lot of confidence to your investors as well. The technology is second to none. The data and the intelligence in which we not only encompass, but we can provide back out is also very, very unique. Nasdaq today is what Nasdaq was not when I joined back in 2008. And it's really been an evolution of a company. People think about the largest companies in the world, Apple, NVIDIA, Microsoft. Of course, from Brazil, you have XP and Stone and some of the other great partners for Nasdaq. But we've really grown into this organic type of technology corporation, whether it's anti-financial crime, whether it's our recent acquisition of Adenza. So we are a global company from around the world that can service corporates from anywhere in which they operate and where they're domiciled. So whether it's going to be in Latin America or whether it's going to be in Asia, the great thing and what's really unique about Nasdaq is that we have, I like to say, boots on the ground. We have people like myself that when you have answers, we can service you and we can give you, those answers in a real time. When you have questions, they say we have the answers, and we can do that in a real time fashion. And I think that's really important. And as we continue to grow and make strategic acquisitions, and you see Nasdaq, obviously become more globalized, which we are. We own over 30 exchanges. We operate through our technology platform over 100 different technology exchanges from around the world. So we are the leader in this ecosystem. So we have those pockets around the world, which makes Nasdaq a really attractive partner.
Okay. So we spoke about market sentiment and the word was optimism, but I want to know how does Nasdaq deal with bear markets when the word is not optimism? What are the tools you have?
Well, we always have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
So I'm a glass half full type of personality. But no, you are right. And we saw that 2020, 2021, there was no shorting of listings and companies at least thinking about it. And then 2022 and 2023, and even the beginning of 2024, better than what it was, still slower than our normal type of pace. We never turn the light switch off. There are corporates that are always looking to be educated. And there's always going to be companies that will go public in good markets and bad. And so what I would say to that, regardless, forget the sentiment. Mm-hmm. Regardless what the markets are doing, if it's a great company with a great foundation, and as an investor, I feel like there's an ROI, a return on my investment, and there's a pathway to growth, any company can get out. It's cyclical. We've had the financial crisis, right? That put a lot of people out of business, but it also created opportunities with M&A, and you'll see roll-ups, and that created stronger type of roll-up type of corporations, and then ultimately they look to tap into the capital markets. And once we get past that, listings begin. It's the same thing a few years ago, even the pandemic. The pandemic was this sharp V shape. Yep. End of the world wasn't coming, although it felt like it, but we were out there speaking to people and preparing. So different than a few years ago, if I'm a company thinking about it when it's slower, what I would do is take that time and opportunity to go tell my story. Companies are going out, and you'll hear the term TTW, test the waters. Yeah. They're telling their story. They're presenting to investors or potential investors, and they're garnering invaluable feedback. What do they like? What don't they like? So it's an opportunity for them to really pivot their story and really direct, along that path, which is going to make them successful as a corporate, as a public company. It's not easy to be public. There's an endless supply of quarterly filings. Without question, you're regulated. We'll do our best to be your partner and provide the state-of-the-art technology and support. But it's not an easy path to be a public company. And there's a lot of responsibilities, and obviously investors and your employees. So the preparation really is very unique. And if you also have to have that moment where if you're willing to go in a tough market, what is the valuation going to be? And if it's acceptable to you, perhaps you take that leap of faith and we'll support you, no question about it. But if not, you continue to map out your plan, tell your story. Not even in good markets. It's not right for everybody. Sometimes you need another quarter or two. And this iteration has been maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 quarters, whatever that number is going to be. So good or bad, there will always be capital formation. And I truly am very optimistic for not only listings to come in 2025, I'm hopeful that we will see the cost of capital come down. That will be another, in my opinion, a bullish element as debt to equities become more attractive in the eye of an investor. You don't have to worry about so much of the yield on the debt side of the house, where equities, by and large, and his history will tell you, it's a more attractive and potential greater return on your investment.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so fantastic. Now, Nasdaq is certainly recognized as one of the leaders pushing technology and innovation in financial markets. And I'd like to explore a little bit one area which is really meaning innovation in finance, which is cryptocurrencies.
Sure.
I mean, there is one particular element of the crypto space, which is 24 hours trading. I mean, how do you see that? I mean, is that important? Is that relevant at all? And do you see that moving out of the cryptocurrency space as well?
Hard to say. I would say, for my opinion, personally, we look at everything. And albeit, I don't know if we get to a 24/7, maybe it's 24/5, in the short term. You have to remember that when you are a regulatory enterprise, when you are an exchange that is responsible to oversee all the trading and protect all your investors and all the corporates that you list on your exchange, that means resources as well. And so from a staffing proponent, it's a lot more to really make sure that people are going to be here around the clock. Do some people want it? Maybe. Some maybe they do not. So I can't tell you specifically as to where we will be, in the future and if that will be a viable option. All I can tell you that for any type of idea that does arise, we take it very serious. We have teams that analyze, and then ultimately we as the exchange will make a decision in the proper channels here. So maybe it's something in the future in which we'll see from digital assets, the tokenization to real world assets, to obviously a 24/5 or 24/7 to equities in the common market. The answer is we'll see how it plays out in the future. So the answer is maybe, but I think there's still a little bit more work to be done.
Okay.
So there's a prognosis that sustainability and ESG factors should be increasingly important for investors, right? How is Nasdaq integrating ESG into its operations?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it's really important, and it plays a vital part. I think in harder times, in harder economies, corporates are obviously trying to right their ship and survive and make sure that, they are deemed for success, that when the good times do come again. But from Nasdaq, not only are we the exchange of choice, but keep in mind, we have a portfolio of corporate services in which we offer, and ESG happens to be one of them. So when you think about me as a corporate, how do I differentiate myself from my peers? What is my ESG story? Well, we have a recent acquisition, which is called Metrio, a few years back. And that allows us to really take a company as a whole and gather this story. And then what do we do with it? We have to report it out to the agencies. Well, there was another acquisition called One Report, and all kind of bolted together. And that's how we report it out. Now I have the data. And now the agencies have the story in which to be told. How do I go out? And how do I cultivate that? And how do I communicate it? Well, we also have a very robust ESG advisory service at Nasdaq as well. A dedicated team to really help anybody that chooses to partner with Nasdaq that can be listed on not only Nasdaq, but any other exchange around the world. We have a team that is designed to help you tell your story and sustainability. And I think it does matter. So it's not only the investor relations, it's not only the governance, it's not the support from the trading and the exchange side. It's the ESG story, the sustainability story, as we like to say. How do we support you with the data, getting it out, and then really communicating it? So it is important.
Very good.
Okay, so Jay, thank you very much for sharing a little bit of your knowledge with us and our clients. And on this note, we end this episode of our NomadCast and this series with Nasdaq. So for all of you who listened so far, thank you. And don't forget to follow Nomad on social media to make sure you never miss any of our content. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your time.
Thank you very much.